Adolf Tolkachev, an engineer working for the Soviet Union's military-industrial complex in the 1970s, did not initially seem like someone who would become one of the most significant intelligence assets for the United States during the Cold War. Born and raised in Moscow, he had an exceptional talent for electronics and avionics, which led him to work on some of the USSR's most advanced radar and aircraft systems. Within the tightly controlled and paranoid environment of Soviet research facilities, Tolkachev's technical expertise quickly earned him recognition, but also exposed him to the inner workings of some of the Soviet Union's most guarded secrets. While his colleagues focused on routine engineering tasks, Tolkachev became increasingly disillusioned with the Soviet regime. He witnessed the inefficiency, corruption, and rigid hierarchy that slowed innovation and restricted his ability to contribute meaningfully to his work. Motivated by a combination of personal frustration, ideological opposition, and a desire to make a meaningful impact, he began contemplating the possibility of sharing information with the West. By the mid-1970s, he had made tentative contacts with CIA operatives in Europe, beginning a careful and clandestine process of vetting before offering any sensitive material. His position gave him access to plans, schematics, and technical specifications of some of the USSR's most advanced radar and fighter jet systems, knowledge that could dramatically shift the strategic balance if it reached the United States. The CIA recognized immediately the value of such intelligence. Even small pieces of information could allow the U.S. to develop countermeasures, improve aircraft survivability, and gain insight into Soviet operational planning. Tolkachev's approach was methodical. He knew the risks were immense. Discovery would almost certainly mean execution, but he also understood that providing information in a careful, calculated manner could maximize impact while minimizing the likelihood of detection. Using dead drops, covert meetings, and complex communication protocols, he began passing detailed technical documents, diagrams, and reports to CIA officers operating in Europe. The information he delivered was not abstract or theoretical. It was concrete, actionable intelligence that allowed American engineers and analysts to understand Soviet radar capabilities, electronic countermeasure vulnerabilities, and the performance limitations of aircraft that were otherwise shrouded in secrecy. In these early stages, Tolkachev's contributions were modest in volume, but precise in value. Each document, each schematic confirmed his reliability and skill in managing clandestine operations while maintaining the utmost secrecy. He became a carefully calibrated instrument of intelligence collection, one whose knowledge and discretion would eventually make him one of the most devastating assets against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. His work was not driven by money or personal gain, though he did receive compensation. It was a calculated effort to correct what he saw as systemic failures in the Soviet military apparatus, and to provide the United States with knowledge that could save lives and shift strategic advantage. Tolkachev's early actions set the stage for an extraordinary espionage career that would quietly and decisively change the trajectory of Cold War technology and military preparedness. By the late 1970s, Adolf Tolkachev's espionage activities had grown in both scope and significance. The CIA had established a secure and reliable communication channel with him, allowing for a steady flow of sensitive information. Tolkachev had gained access to some of the Soviet Union's most advanced fighter jet and radar systems, including schematics, technical manuals, and design specifications that had previously been closely guarded under strict security protocols. Every document he delivered provided the United States with an unprecedented understanding of Soviet technological capabilities. The intelligence Tolkachev supplied enabled U.S. defense analysts to develop countermeasures that would drastically reduce the effectiveness of Soviet radar and missile systems, directly influencing the design and operational planning of American aircraft. His work was particularly crucial because it gave the U.S. insights into vulnerabilities that could be exploited in both defensive and offensive contexts, allowing pilots and strategists to anticipate Soviet detection methods and electronic countermeasure limitations. Tolkachev's operations were carried out with meticulous care. He understood that the smallest misstep, being seen with a foreign contact, misplacing a document, or deviating from established covert procedures could result in immediate execution. To mitigate these risks, he developed elaborate routines for moving information, often using dead drops in public locations, encrypted messages, and indirect handoffs that allowed him to maintain plausible deniability. The KGB's internal security was notoriously stringent, with constant surveillance and background checks, but Tolkachev's knowledge of the system allowed him to navigate these dangers with remarkable precision. Over time, the CIA came to realize that Tolkachev was one of the most valuable intelligence assets of the Cold War era. Unlike agents who provided information on political or operational matters, Tolkachev offered highly technical, actionable intelligence that could be directly applied to the development of new systems, counter-strategies, and defense protocols. His contributions effectively allowed the United States to maintain a technological edge in electronic warfare, radar detection, and aircraft design, counterbalancing decades of Soviet secrecy. Despite the enormous strategic value of his intelligence, Tolkachev remained relatively unknown outside the highest circles of American intelligence. He lived a quiet, seemingly ordinary life in Moscow, working in laboratories and attending meetings that masked his secret contributions to U.S. national security. His ability to blend into the normalcy of everyday life made him almost invisible to the Soviet authorities, a phantom working within the heart of the USSR's military-industrial complex. Financially, the CIA provided him with remuneration through covert channels, ensuring that he could sustain his lifestyle and continue operations without arousing suspicion. Yet, beyond money, Tolkachev's motivation seemed rooted in a desire to correct what he saw as systemic flaws within the Soviet military establishment, to provide the West with the knowledge necessary to prevent catastrophic miscalculations, and to ensure a balance of power that might avert large-scale conflict. The late 1970s solidified Tolkachev's role as a linchpin in Cold War intelligence, a single individual whose technical expertise, courage, and careful execution would deliver years of invaluable knowledge to the United States, shaping military planning and strategic calculations in ways few outside intelligence circles would ever comprehend. In the early 1980s, Adolf Tolkachev's espionage reached a level of extraordinary strategic importance. By this time, he had provided the CIA with detailed technical information on Soviet fighter jets, radar systems, and surface-to-air missile defenses that were previously considered impenetrable secrets. The intelligence he delivered allowed U.S. engineers and analysts to develop advanced electronic countermeasures, improve the stealth and survivability of American aircraft, and anticipate Soviet tactics in potential aerial combat scenarios. Each transmission from Tolkachev was carefully planned and executed. He employed complex dead-drop techniques, precise timing, and encrypted communications to ensure that the exchange of information remained undetected. The KGB, known for its relentless internal security measures and extensive surveillance networks, remained unaware of his activities, despite ongoing investigations into possible leaks. Tolkachev's ability to navigate this environment demonstrated not only technical brilliance, but also a deep understanding of human psychology and the operational weaknesses of the Soviet security apparatus. Within the CIA, the analysts who received his intelligence quickly recognized the unprecedented value of the material. Unlike other sources, Tolkachev's information was both reliable and immediately actionable. The designs and schematics he provided allowed for the simulation of Soviet radar detection capabilities, testing of electronic warfare systems, and development of tactics that would neutralize threats long before they became operational. The effect of this intelligence on American military planning was profound. Air Force strategists could design missions with precise knowledge of Soviet defenses, significantly reducing risk to pilots and assets. Additionally, the intelligence contributed to the development of new aircraft technology and guided the direction of research programs aimed at countering Soviet advances. Despite the immense risk, Tolkachev continued his operations with remarkable consistency. His movements were cautious, his interactions discreet, and his documentation meticulous. He avoided drawing attention to himself in any context, understanding that exposure would not only end his life, but potentially compromise the entire network of intelligence he had nurtured. For the Soviets, he remained an invisible cog within the machinery of their military-industrial complex, his daily contributions to aircraft development and radar engineering appearing entirely routine. Financial incentives provided by the CIA were secondary to his overarching motivation, a desire to correct systemic weaknesses within the Soviet defense establishment, to provide the West with the knowledge to maintain strategic balance, and to prevent miscalculations that could escalate into large-scale conflict. Tolkachev's espionage in the early 1980s exemplifies the profound impact a single, highly skilled individual can have on international security. Through technical expertise, meticulous planning, and unwavering discretion, he provided the United States with intelligence that directly altered the strategic equilibrium of the Cold War, saving lives, shaping military doctrine, and demonstrating the critical importance of insider knowledge in the shadowed world of espionage. As the mid-1980s arrived, Adolf Tolkachev's espionage activities began to have strategic repercussions beyond the immediate technical realm. The intelligence he provided on Soviet radar and fighter jet capabilities had not only enhanced American aircraft survivability, but also informed broader military strategies and procurement decisions. U.S. defense planners were able to anticipate Soviet air defense deployments, adjust training programs for pilots, and prioritize research in areas that directly countered the technological edge of the USSR. Tolkachev's information was instrumental in shaping these decisions. Within the Soviet Union, security measures remained stringent, but Tolkachev had developed an extraordinary understanding of both the operational and bureaucratic mechanisms that could expose him. He meticulously tracked who had access to certain classified materials, how internal communications flowed, and which inspection protocols were regularly enforced. This allowed him to avoid the subtle triggers that might have alerted the KGB to his activities. Each document he passed to the CIA contained not only technical schematics, but also contextual knowledge that explained the practical application, limitations, and vulnerabilities of Soviet systems. Analysts on the receiving end could immediately translate this knowledge into countermeasure strategies, simulations, and operational planning. The cumulative effect of his intelligence was profound. The United States was able to neutralize threats that, without his input, could have had devastating consequences in a potential conflict scenario. Financial and operational pressures within the CIA ensured that Tolkachev's contributions were both valued and carefully managed. Payments were delivered covertly, maintaining operational security while providing him with the means to continue his espionage work without arousing suspicion. His personal life remained outwardly mundane, a crucial component of his cover. Colleagues and supervisors noted nothing unusual in his routines. He attended meetings, contributed to projects, and presented himself as a dedicated engineer with no indication of the extraordinary role he was playing in the geopolitical chess game between East and West. The risks he undertook were immense. Discovery would have almost certainly led to execution. Yet he maintained a disciplined regimen of operational security, balancing access to highly sensitive information with the necessity of remaining undetected. The psychological pressure of living a double life, coupled with the knowledge that each transmission could dramatically alter global military capabilities, underscores the exceptional courage and strategic foresight Tolkachev possessed. By the mid-1980s, he had become one of the most valuable human intelligence assets the United States had ever recruited from within the Soviet Union, operating in near-total secrecy. The cumulative impact of his espionage was not merely technical. It reshaped American approaches to Cold War planning, highlighting how a single, dedicated, and highly skilled individual could exert influence over the strategic balance between superpowers. Through careful observation, technical mastery, and unwavering discretion, Adolf Tolkachev had achieved what few spies in history could claim: a tangible, measurable, and enduring effect on the course of global military power during one of the tensest periods of the 20th century. By the late 1980s, the CIA had come to rely heavily on Adolf Tolkachev's intelligence for its strategic planning, and the value of his contributions became even more apparent as tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union remained high. Each technical document he provided, whether detailing radar detection thresholds, missile guidance systems, or aircraft performance characteristics, enabled the U.S. to maintain a precise understanding of Soviet capabilities. This intelligence directly influenced procurement priorities, training exercises, and electronic warfare developments, ensuring that American pilots could operate effectively even against advanced Soviet defenses. Tolkachev's operational security remained nearly flawless despite the intensifying scrutiny of the KGB, which had become increasingly concerned about potential leaks in the military-industrial complex. To maintain his cover, he employed a combination of technical ingenuity and personal discipline. He carefully monitored which materials he accessed, maintained a routine that appeared entirely ordinary to colleagues, and avoided unnecessary interactions that might raise suspicion. His communications with CIA officers were conducted through a series of meticulously planned dead drops, which included multiple layers of verification to prevent interception or compromise. The strategic implications of his work were profound. With access to his intelligence, American defense analysts were able to identify vulnerabilities in Soviet radar networks, develop countermeasures, and adjust operational tactics in ways that would not have been possible through satellite imagery or signals intelligence alone. The direct translation of his technical knowledge into actionable military capability exemplifies the unique power of human intelligence. Tolkachev's courage in undertaking these actions cannot be overstated. He was acutely aware that any mistake, however small, could lead to immediate execution. Yet he persisted, motivated not by wealth alone, but by a combination of professional pride, ideological considerations, and the understanding that his work could prevent catastrophic miscalculations in the delicate balance of the Cold War. As the 1980s drew to a close, the impact of his intelligence became even more significant. U.S. aircraft designs and electronic warfare strategies were now informed by precise knowledge of Soviet limitations, giving American pilots and strategists a substantial advantage in hypothetical conflict scenarios. Tolkachev's work also had a broader geopolitical effect. By neutralizing the technological edge the Soviets had pursued for decades, he indirectly influenced negotiations, arms control discussions, and the overall balance of power that shaped the final years of the Cold War. Ultimately, Adolf Tolkachev's espionage was a masterclass in the use of technical expertise, strategic insight, and personal courage to alter the course of international security. His contributions remained largely invisible to the public at the time, but within intelligence circles, he became one of the most revered and consequential sources of the Cold War era. The scope,
precision, and enduring impact of his work serve as a powerful reminder of how one individual, armed with knowledge and discretion, can fundamentally shape the strategic realities of superpowers.
In 1985, the KGB finally uncovered the source of one of the most damaging leaks in Soviet technical intelligence, Adolf Tolkachev. The painstaking investigation, which had involved monitoring suspected personnel, analyzing anomalies in document access, and tracking irregularities in project timelines, led them inexorably to him. Tolkachev, who had successfully evaded suspicion for nearly a decade, was arrested at his Moscow apartment in a covert operation that left little doubt as to the severity of his offenses. Upon interrogation, he was confronted with evidence of the extensive and precise nature of the intelligence he had passed to the CIA. The KGB quickly recognized the catastrophic impact his espionage had wrought. Detailed knowledge of Soviet radar and aircraft systems had been provided to the United States, compromising national security and undermining the USSR's technological advantages. The consequences for the Soviet Union were severe. Numerous projects were delayed or re-engineered in the aftermath of the leak, costing time, money, and strategic advantage. Several Soviet engineers and officers faced intense scrutiny, creating an atmosphere of distrust and paranoia within the military-industrial complex. Tolkachev himself was charged with treason and swiftly tried in a closed Soviet court. He was sentenced to death in 1987, reflecting both the magnitude of his betrayal and the Soviet leadership's intent to set a harsh example. His execution was carried out in secrecy, a final measure to prevent his legacy from inspiring similar defections. Despite his tragic end, the impact of Tolkachev's actions endured. The intelligence he provided had given the United States a critical technological edge in electronic warfare and aircraft countermeasures, fundamentally shaping Cold War military strategy in ways that extended well beyond his lifetime. Analysts and historians have since recognized him as one of the most effective technical spies of the era, demonstrating how expertise, careful planning, and courage could influence the balance of superpower conflict. His story also served as a cautionary tale for intelligence communities worldwide, highlighting both the power and peril inherent in insider access. For the CIA, Tolkachev's contributions represented one of the most tangible and measurable successes in human intelligence during the Cold War. They provided actionable knowledge that directly influenced the development of military technology, strategic planning, and the understanding of Soviet operational capabilities. Today, declassified documents continue to reveal the breadth and depth of his espionage, offering scholars and analysts critical insight into one of the most clandestine and impactful operations of the late 20th century. Adolf Tolkachev's legacy is a stark reminder of the extraordinary influence a single individual can exert when technical skill, strategic insight, and personal resolve converge in the shadowy realm of espionage.